Hey, welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I'm the fat guy. Most people just call me Brett. Appreciate you listening today. We're going to talk about phenomenal new. It's not really that new. It's about 4 or 5 years old. This study I found, which highly suggests. You never say proves. Science rarely ever says proves. Highly suggests, highly supports this notion that intermittent fasting, all other things equal, your daily activity equal, the amount of food you eat being equal, all these things being equal, just by going to an intermittent fasting way of eating, you'll lose weight. And it's just phenomenal. I cannot wait to share the results with you. But first, I must thank our patrons who support the podcast so generously by chunking me a few bucks. Helps me cover the cost of podcast hosting, the gear to record the podcast, the time I spent looking at studies, me being stupid enough to share my own personal weight loss journey, and all these types of things. Thanks so much. Brand new patron on this month, Randy Decker. Thanks, Randy. Glad to have you along. I really do appreciate you more than I can even let you know. Angie Richardson, Hannah DeMello, Eric Barnhart, Cindy Carr, Bessie Williams, Kenneth Wilkerson, Bobby Houston. Everybody has heroes in life. You guys are my heroes. If you'd like to become a supporter, it really is just a few bucks means the world to me. Like, I can't even tell you how much it helps. You can head on over to losewithmason.com, LOSEWITHMASON, losewithmason.com. And you'll see the benefits and the perks there. And there's several of them. We do a patron-only podcast that only patrons get. Most cases, patrons get a free version of, or a version of the podcast that doesn't have all this stuff in it. It just jumps right straight to the meat and potatoes of the podcast. I'm not going to do that for this one because here's the perk that patrons are getting this time. I'm going to give them this information that I'm going to give you here in the public podcast, but then I'm going to drill down into all the details and particulars of this study. Because people are curious, well, how did they arrive at that decision? How do we know that's accurate? Did they, is it one of these whack studies? I'm going to drill down in the particulars for my patrons only. So if this podcast fascinates you or you find it interesting and you want to know more, another reason for you to maybe consider being a patron. Nevertheless, you don't want to do that, that's fine. Thank you for listening to the ads. I know they can be annoying, but they really help me and I appreciate it more than you know. So we're going to be talking about an intermittent fasting study from 2016. And so here's what we learned from the study. And I'm not getting too deep into it. I'm just going to tell you, basically the results and my own personal story, anecdotal, and then many people that I've worked with. And in the past 5 years, I've helped a lot of people lose weight. And this has been one of the key tools that I've used is intermittent fasting. Technically time-restricted eating. If you're eating every day, it's technically just time-restricted eating. For it to be intermittent fasting, you have to fast more than 24 hours. Which isn't necessary, by the way, for most people. Now, for really obese people, it can be. Coincidentally, today I'm working my way through a 36-hour fast. I haven't done a 36-hour fast in a very long time. But I fast 20 to 23 hours every day, and I eat 1 or 2 meals in a 1 to 4 hour period, depending on what I decide to do that day. And when you combine that with lowering the carbohydrates and getting the carbs down, whether you go keto, which is highly recommended, especially if you're obese, keto is the way to go. I hate using the word keto. It's such a fad thing anymore. Keto is basically eating real food and not processed food, and then leaving the starchy vegetables and the fruits out. So fruits are real food, obviously. Potatoes are real food. Carrots are real food. But you leave them out. You leave the highest carb stuff out, and the rest of it's just real food. Leafy greens, salads, meats, eggs, cheeses, that type thing. It's just real food. If you just eat that food, you'll lose weight. All right, let's get into it, man. They studied, all these subjects were men, but I can tell you this from other studies that we've mentioned in the past. Intermittent fasting actually works better for women than it does for men. So we can reasonably transfer the results of this study that only include men over to women, okay? We can't do it absolutely empirically because there weren't any women in the study, but we can gather and infer from other studies that have shown that intermittent fasting actually works better for women than it does for men, that you would see a similar type outcome. So it was 8-week study, so I'll tell you that. Again, I'll drill down in all the details about the study in the patron-only podcast. But it was 8 weeks. It was a reasonably long study. We've seen a lot of intermittent fasting studies that lasted 7 days. We've seen some 21 days. I looked at one not too long ago that was 4 weeks. 8 weeks is pretty good. It gives you, people settle into the routine. It becomes something that they do habitually every day. That the results are consistent, they're more reliable. And so for all those reasons, it's a good study. Nevertheless, so the difference between the two groups of men, and it was a controlled, randomized study. In other words, they started out with all these men. They randomly divided them in half. They didn't pick them based on any kind of protocol. Didn't pick them based on height. Didn't pick them based on haircut. Nothing. Just was random. Randomly half went into one pile and randomly half went into another pile. And they continued their same level of eating that they had been doing up until that day. Now, this one was super consistent, and I'm not going to get in all the details of why this one is super consistent and super reliable as far as them eating the same amount that they usually eat. I'll drill down to that into the Patreon-only version of this. But trust me, it's there. It's one of the most reliable I've seen, the methodology that they used, which makes the results of this study even that much more exciting. So all the men, whether they were in the intermittent fasting group half or in the just keep doing what you always do kinda half, in other words, the one group can eat all day. You wake up in the morning and eat, and you're eating until you go to bed at night or whatever. They both ate 3 meals though. So there was consistently between the two groups. Like one group wasn't eating 3 meals and 3 snacks, and the other one just eating 3 meals. They all just ate 3 meals, and that was it. No snacking in between, just 3 meals. Yes, I'm getting to the exciting part. Here it is. I know you've waited. You're like, come on, just give me the juicy stuff. So, the half that didn't do time-restricted eating, they just ate the consistently amount of food they had been eating for their health and wellness the whole time, had a 2.8% reduction in body fat. A 2.8% reduction in body fat. So they lost a little bit of body fat, not a lot, but they did lose a little bit over 8 weeks. What about the folks who did time-restricted eating? Kept everything the same. The only thing they changed was they just squeezed their food down into, and this study was 8 hours, I'll tell you that. It was 8 hours. They just squeezed their food into an 8-hour window. Instead of eating anytime they wanted all day, their 3 meals, they only ate within that 8 hours. 16.4% fat reduction. That is crazy. That's almost 6 times as much fat loss. 6 times, almost. That is a crazy difference considering that everything else was the same. They didn't change anything else. The only difference they did was move their food that they ate into an 8-hour eating window. That's just phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. Now look, you may be skeptical. I know people personally who, matter of fact, it's been a while. It was in 2019, around the end of 2019, the last time I talked to somebody that did this, and then they went on to have success. But I had somebody message me, and they're like, I don't want to do keto. I don't want to count carbs. What is it that I can do? Do you have some advice for me without you telling me that I sound like a punk for not doing what I should do? And I never tell anybody that. I'm like, look, you have to decide how much you want results and then decide what you're willing to do to get them. Some people honestly aren't willing to do that much, and I don't judge them. I've been there in my life where I'm just not doing that much. I just, I've been there. So no judgments. But I told him, I said, look, you keep eating everything that you're eating right now. Whatever it is you like. I don't care. What do you like for breakfast? Grits, cereal, bacon and eggs. What are you eating for lunch? Burgers, you're eating salads, you're eating steaks, you're eating pork chops. I don't care. Dinner, whatever it is that you currently enjoy eating, that's fine. I would ask you to do two things. Stop drinking sodas. If you are a soda or a sweet tea drinker, stop drinking them when you're not having a meal. That was the first thing I told him. If you're not having a meal, don't drink a soda. Now, preferably, you should never drink a soda. It's liquid calories that it gets absorbed into your blood very, very quickly, causes insane insulin spikes, causing you to go to remain in a fat storage rather than a fat burning mode. And they're just horrible. You should just drinking calories is just a bad idea. There's no reason for it. But if you're going to drink them, drink your soda with your meal, and then don't do sodas in between meals, because I find most people do that. Not only do they drink the soda with the meal, they keep a soda with them all day. They're sipping on they eat at noon, they leave lunch, go back to work, they got a soda, they sit on the desk, they're drinking the Coke all day. Don't do that. If you're going to drink it with a meal. Preferably don't. And then my other thing is eat your meals in an 8-hour window or less. So, first meal at lunch, last meal at 8 p.m., noon to 8, 11 to 7, 10 to 6, whatever. And if you want to narrow it lower than that, do it in a 6-hour window. But at least do an 8-hour window. Okay? You got to at least do 8-hour window. And she contacted me in February, amazed at how she had lost weight and hadn't changed anything and had eaten kept pretty much eating the same. So that's just anecdotal, but I can tell you the power of, because look, there's things that happen when you stop eating. Okay? When you stop eating, your body goes into a different state. It goes into a processing, digesting, distributing the last meal. And then it transitions from that into all of our hormones, and things go back to the status quo. And then they fall a little bit lower, and then your body switches over to a different kind of mode, and that is a mode where you burn fat. You only get there by putting distance between food. You got to put distance. So, look, I'll tell you the same thing. If you're already dieting, let's say maybe you're not doing keto, maybe you're not doing low carb, you just whatever kind of diet you're doing. Starting today, just add in this one new thing. Eat your meals in an 8-hour window or less. And only eat meals. That's the other thing that's important, is this fasting or this snacking thing is horrible. When you snack, it's another meal. So we've been trained by people who sell us food. These are multi-trillion-dollar corporations. Multi-billion-dollar corporations have trained us that snacks are not meals. Anytime you eat food and put calories in, you are consuming another meal. It's a very small meal, but your body goes back into processing a meal mode. All the things that happen when you eat your 800 calorie dinner happens when you eat your 150 calorie snack. The exact same bodily physiology happens. These mechanisms, pathways, hormones, all these things kick into motion to where you're in food processing mode again. It happens every single time. And not even a snack. Remember I talked about sodas. If you eat lunch at 2 and you're drinking a soda, or you eat lunch at noon and you at 1:30 you open a Coke, you start drinking it, you are consuming another meal. A Coke is about 140 calories. You're having a 140 calorie meal. And even worse is sipping on the Coke so that it lasts you 3 hours. Basically, you're having a non-stop 3-hour long meal where your body never gets out of meal processing mode. It just never gets out of that mode. This is the problem. This is why most people are fat. It's the processed carbs in the food, and it's that you never stop eating. Americans never stop eating. Your body is constantly in a processing food state. It never switches over to any other kind of state. Maybe at night when you go to bed. But most people don't get but 5-6 hours sleep. They eat right up until the moment they crash, and then they wake up eating. So they're getting a very brief respite from eating. Very brief. 5, 6, 7 hours, Whereas somebody that's doing 16-8 is getting a 16-hour break from eating, and their body gets to switch into a completely different mode. And your body needs that. It's designed to work that way. All right, guys, I don't know what else I can say about this. 2.8% versus 16.4%. How much fat would you like to lose in the next 8 weeks? 2.8% of your fat or 16.4% of your fat? Well, do some intermittent fasting. And I have other podcasts on how to work your way up to that, but basically, if you can't do 16-8, you just say, look, I'm going to eat in a 12-hour window this week. And the next week, move it to 14 hours. And then the next week, move it to 16. Whatever it takes to get you there. And you can go past 16. You can go to 18. You can go to 20. And then you can do everything in between and mix it up based on the day like I do. I occasionally do 16-8. I usually try to shoot for 18-6 at minimum. Some days I'll do 19-5. Some days I'll do 24. Some days I do 23-1. Matter of fact, I've done a variation of all of those. I'd say over the past 10 days, I've done at least one of each of those. Because it's so flexible. Intermittent fasting is so flexible. But I try to keep the 16-8 as the minimum. That's the low end of the spectrum. I appreciate so much you listening to the podcast today. I can't thank you enough for supporting it, putting up with the advertisements, considering being a patron. And again, thanks so much to my patrons. If you would like to consider being a patron, losewithmason.com. And also, if you want to drill down into the numbers and understand how this study worked, all the particulars, all the details, we're going to outline that in a brief, efficient, but informative manner over for patrons only at losewithmason.com. And good luck. We appreciate you listening. And if I can help you on your weight loss journey, hit me up on social media. It's Fat Guy Podcast, no matter which form of social media you use. Fat Guy Podcast is the username. If you go to the Facebook page, you'll see that we've started a steps challenge. If you're looking to get more steps in every day and move a little bit more, a very positive group over there, you can join that group. Would love to see you there. And hey, keep it up. Don't lose heart. You're never out of it as long as you stay in it. You just stay in it. Stay in it. Stay in it to win it. We'll get it done.